Good evening. Relax your shoulders. Let your breath slow. You're about to drift back in time to a world of rigid silence, of sharp blades, and of quiet suffering wrapped in silk and steel. But tell me, have you ever wondered what it truly felt like to be a samurai? Not the myths, not the polished legends with cherry blossoms and noble deaths, but the real, brutal, grueling life of a man born to serve, obey, and, when ordered, kill without hesitation. Let us begin at dawn. You're waking up on a cooled tatami mat, the smell of damp straw rising into your nostrils. Your body aches again. Not from injury in battle, no, but from yesterday's endless kata, sword drills, and kneeling hours before a stern, nearly silent master who never once blinked at your pain. The room is dim. Shoji squeals filter the morning light into a soft haze. Outside, a single bird calls, but inside, silence reigns. Your kimono is thin against the chill, and your stomach empty. Breakfast will not come until your posture is perfect, your blade is clean, and your obedience proven. There is no privacy, not even for boys. Another apprentice snores softly beside you, his face turned away, bruises dark on his arms. Your own fingers are blistered again. You dare not speak. Speech is for the permitted. You are not yet worthy of words. This is your life now. You were chosen, or perhaps taken. Maybe you're a younger son of a low-ranking samurai family, sent away to train with the hope of survival, or glory, or marriage into a better clan. But in truth, few rise. Most only endure.
The dojo is quiet but tense, like a bowstring drawn taut, always on the edge of snapping. Every wooden beam here has heard screams, training screams, not cries of fear, because fear is not allowed. And yet it lives in your chest, coiled and invisible. Today, your first task will be the same as yesterday. Clean the weapons of your seniors, sharpen their blades, polish their armor, lace their stiffened greaves until your fingers bleed. If you're lucky, they'll ignore you. If not, well, the bruises will fade. And then the drills. Sword drawn. Step forward. Cut. Again. Step forward. Cut. Again. For hours. Until your wrists shake. Until the master's fan snaps and you freeze mid-motion. Heart pounding. Terrified that your stance was wrong. You long for water. You long for rest. But the way of the warrior begins with denial, of comfort, of complaint, of softness, even of self. And still, deep inside, something holds you here, a whisper of purpose, a longing not for violence, but for belonging. You look up. On the wall hangs a single banner with black calligraphy, Bushido, the way of the warrior. But you don't feel like a warrior yet. You feel like a child in a cage of ritual and silence. And you are. But the cage is meant to shape you or break you.
The blade is cold in your hands.
too cold. Your fingers, stiff with the ache of repetition, can barely hold it right. But there is no room for excuses. The sword is your breath now, and if your breath falters, well, so might your life. You kneel, again, before the master. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. His presence fills the dojo like incense, dense, old, and suffocating. His eyes scan your posture with quiet contempt, and you know already it's wrong. Today's lesson is kenjutsu, the art of the sword, but more than that, it's about the death of the self. You are not here to express individuality. You are here to submit. You bow low. Your forehead brushes the straw. You smell sweat and faint mold, the scent of hours and hours of effort soaked into every inch of this floor. The class begins in silence. One move, then another, 1,000 times. Draw, slash, reset, breathe. Your knees ache from kneeling. Your forearms scream. Your shoulders are fire. The cuts must be exact, measured, beautiful in their lethality. Your master walks among you, carrying his lacquered fan, not to cool himself, but to strike. One flick of that fan against the back of your neck is enough shame to last a week. One boy falters. He's slow. His stance wobbles. The master stops. Everyone freezes. You hold your breath. Then a blow. The fan cracks down on the boy's shoulder. He winces but says nothing. Pain is a lesson. Tears are disrespect. You don't know his name. You're not allowed to ask. Around you, the room is a sea of muted movement, boys slashing, breathing, sweating, a dull rhythm of metal scraping sheath. The walls, if they had ears, would be deafened by centuries of silent desperation.
Outside, the sun climbs higher. You know, vaguely, that elsewhere in the castle, the elite are waking to soft silks and rice porridge. Somewhere, your lord's daughter is combing her hair with a jade pin while maids whisper about marriage. But not here. Here you repeat the same cut again and again until your wrist swells and your vision blurs. Until the sword feels like an extension of your pain. And yet, this is discipline. Discipline means doing it anyway, in silence, without glory, without comfort. Even when your stomach turns from lack of food. Even when the wound on your ankle seeps beneath the tabi socks. Even when you've forgotten why you started at all. You remember only the words you are told to remember. A samurai's mind must be sharper than his blade. The lesson ends with one word, not from the master, but from his assistant. Stop. You lower the sword. You do not sigh. You bow again. And then you are dismissed, not to rest, but to chores. Cleaning, carrying buckets, scrubbing floors you'll never wear. No thanks, no praise, because you are still nothing, not yet worthy. Only a whisper of a warrior caught in the echo of someone else's war. And somewhere deep inside, perhaps you begin to wonder, how many years of obedience does it take to earn a moment of honor?
You're hungry. Not the kind of hunger that growls and passes. No, this is the slow, gnawing ache that lives behind your ribs, that turns even plain rice into a fantasy. You haven't eaten since the night before. A single bowl of millet gruel, watery and tasteless. Luxury is for the highborn. You, apprentice, must earn every grain. The morning's drills have drained what little strength you had left. Your hands are shaking. The sword was heavy today, heavier than usual. Or maybe it's just that you're shrinking. You try not to show it. Hunger is weakness. Weakness is shame. And shame is unbearable. After training, you carry buckets to the well. The rope burns your palms, still raw from the blade's hilt. The water sloshes, icy against your legs, soaking your thin hakama. You don't flinch. You're not allowed to. A senior apprentice sneers at you. His family's crest is embroidered into his sleeve, his lineage higher than yours, his father richer, his path easier. He knocks the bucket from your hand. Water splashes across the dirt. He laughs. You bow. You pick it up. You fetch more. No words. Later, back inside, you kneel to eat. Bowls are placed in front of you, steaming faintly. But not your bowl, not yet. You must wait for your superiors to finish. One by one, you watch as they eat slowly, deliberately, sometimes noisily, just to remind you of your place.
By the time your turn comes, the food is lukewarm. A few clumps of rice, some turnip root. No meat, of course. Meat is for warriors. You are not a warrior. Yet. You chew slowly, trying to make it last, but it never does. Outside, the sun is setting, but rest is a fantasy. There are floors to scrub. There is armor to clean. You kneel again, this time before a breastplate stained with old sweat and blood. You wipe it carefully, using a cloth worn thin by years of silent labor. Sometimes, you catch your reflection in the lacquered surface. You don't recognize yourself. There is a ceremony tonight. You won't attend. Only the older students may stand in formation for the daimyo's inspection. You'll watch from behind a screen, barely breathing, as they present themselves in gleaming armor, perfect posture, cold faces. One of them is only a year older than you, but he walks as if born into steel. He was chosen early, trained privately. His sandals are silk-fretted. He eats fish. You envy him, but envy is another weakness you must swallow. Instead, you kneel in the shadows, stomach empty again, eyes wide in the fading light, wondering how long it will take for the hunger to go away. Not the hunger for food, that's manageable. You're learning to tame that. No, the hunger for recognition. But tonight, once the ceremonial drums fall silent, you'll return to your mat. You'll lie down beside other boys who don't speak your name. The cold will creep in again. Your fingers will throb. And sleep, if it comes, will be brief. Tomorrow, it begins again.
The first time you smell death, it's not on a battlefield. It's in the armory. The scent is unmistakable. Rust, sweat, and the faint sour trace of blood gone old. Not fresh, not sharp, but lingering, like a ghost that refuses to leave. You're there to clean armor again. But today, your master unlocks a wooden chest bound in blackened iron. Inside lies a cuirass, dented, scorched, still marked with a jagged cut along its side. And beneath it, a helmet, split down the back. This was not ceremonial. This was worn into war. You're told to scrub it, carefully, quietly, reverently.
You try not to think about the man who last wore it, about whether he walked home or if his body still lies somewhere in a ravine picked at by birds. But the thought clings to you. There is no glory in this smell, no cherry blossoms or poetry, just the heavy stench of sweat-soaked silk, leather straps stiff with old blood, and the knowledge that even the strongest can fall. Later that week, you're taken outside the compound. No warning, no words, just a gesture, and you follow. The group is smaller than usual. The sky is gray, rain threatens but does not fall. You march in silence through fields of rice, past bowed peasants who do not meet your eyes. One man, bent with age, wears no shoes. His toes are blackened from frostbite. He is worth less than your sword, and he knows it.
But you're not heading to the village. You're going to the outer training grounds, where you will learn to kill. Today, you hold a real blade. No wooden practice sword, no blunted edges. The katana in your hand is clean, elegant, deadly. Your hands tremble, not from fear, but from weight. Not just the physical, but the moral. The target is a straw man, human-shaped, stuffed tight. But the instructor speaks softly. Imagine he wronged your lord. Cut him down. And you do. The blade slides through, not cleanly. Your angle was off. You hear a rip, a crunch of tightly packed straw snapping. The torso sags. You bow. You reset. You try again. And again. And again. Until the edge slices almost without resistance, until the act becomes automatic. You wonder what that means about you. That night you don't sleep. You lie on your mat, staring into the darkness, hearing the swish of the blade over and over, the sound it made as it passed through something that looked like a man. You wonder what your father would say, or if he would say anything at all. War is coming, the older students whisper. A minor lord has rebelled. There are skirmishes in the north. The castle has doubled its patrols. The blacksmiths work through the night. And you wonder, not with fear, but with a strange, hollow readiness, if your turn is near. You've trained for years, but no one tells you what it feels like to see a real man fall. They tell you the samurai lives by honor, but what they don't say is how thin that word becomes when it's your only blanket on a freezing night, when your hands are raw, when you haven't eaten in 2 days, and your only honor is surviving just enough to serve. Today, you are told to accompany your master outside the castle walls. Not as a warrior, not even as an apprentice, as a shadow, as a quiet boy who carries his sandals when he walks into a room, who bows before anyone looks, who listens and remembers but must never speak. You walk behind him in silence as you enter a village. The people scatter before his presence. His armor is gleaming. Your robe is patched. They bow deeply, not to you, never to you. You see children your age hauling buckets, women with tired eyes weaving straw mats, men stooped from planting.
The smell of manure, smoke, and human sweat floats heavy in the summer air. A dog limps past. You're not sure it's a dog anymore. This is who you serve, the master tells you. These peasants, this rice, this mud, this land. But as he speaks, you watch a boy your age, kneeling in the dirt, pressing his forehead to the ground before your master. His hands are cracked. He has no sword, only fear. Where is the honor in this? You begin to understand. Honor is a story, a veil, a promise told often enough, it sounds like truth. You return to the castle. The gates shut behind you. The drums beat again. You're summoned to watch a punishment. A young samurai, barely 20, kneels in the courtyard. He failed in his duty. Rumor says he let a bandit escape. Or perhaps he merely spoke too boldly. It doesn't matter now. He wears white. He is alone. The sword is clean, shorter, curved. He bows deeply, one final time, and then, without a cry, he begins the ritual. You turn away, but not fast enough. Later, you're told to clean the stones. The blood is already drying. Flies are beginning to gather. The blade must be returned to its place, oiled, spotless, as though nothing happened. That night, the older students joke softly. One says, "At least he died with honor." Another adds, "Better than starving like a peasant." You stare at your hands, remembering the boy in the village and the one in the courtyard. And you begin to ask for the first time, quietly, secretly, what if honor is just fear dressed in ritual? But you do not speak. You kneel, you clean, you survive. Because in this world, silence is the armor no one sees. The daimyo does not know your name. He never will. You are one of many, silent, bowed, and unseen. But everything you do, every breath you take, is meant to serve him. His land, his rice, his honor. This morning begins before the sun, with the low clang of the temple bell. You rise quickly, not because you are rested, but because hesitation earns punishment. Your body no longer asks for comfort, it simply moves. Today is court day. The daimyo will descend from his private quarters to sit in the great hall, hear disputes, accept offerings, and remind everyone who owns their fate. You are not important enough to speak, but you are important enough to polish the floor on which he walks. You kneel beside other apprentices, scrubbing wooden boards until your knuckles split. Every inch must shine. Every splinter must vanish. By midday, the retainers arrive. Their sandals are gold-threaded, their robes embroidered with cranes and pine trees. They speak in soft, clipped tones. You are invisible to them. But one of them drops a fan. You retrieve it, bowing low, eyes downcast, offering it with both hands as tradition demands. He does not thank you. He does not look at you. He takes it as if it were always his. The hall fills with incense, sweet and heavy. It coats your throat. Mixed with it is the smell of roasted meat. You haven't eaten since last night. A handful of pickled radish and 2 spoonfuls of rice. Your stomach grumbles, and you pray no one hears. At last, the daimyo enters. He walks slowly, deliberately, flanked by guards and advisors. His face is powdered white, his robes layered in silks dyed with colors peasants are allowed to wear.
You keep your head bowed so low, your forehead touches the floor.
You are told to admire him, to serve him, to die for him if necessary. But as you glance up, just briefly, you wonder what he sees when he looks at his warriors, his samurai, his apprentices. Does he see loyalty, or does he see tools? You are dismissed to the outer courtyard. There you carry messages to lesser officials. You bow to the scribes. You fetch water for the guards. You run, barefoot, across stone paths so hot they blister your soles. You hear the whispers. A neighboring clan is stockpiling weapons. There may be war. You may be cold. But until then, you wait. You're told that servitude is the highest form of strength, that obedience is nobility, that a true samurai lives not for himself, but for his master. And yet, you've never seen the daimyo train, never seen him bleed, never seen him carry anything heavier than his fan. That evening, you return to the barracks. Your chores are not finished. You polish a sword that will never be yours. You fold a robe worn by someone who outranks you by birth alone. And as you kneel for the final prayer of the day, you whisper silently just once, "Is this still the way of the warrior, or just the life of a servant?" But no one answers. The bell rings again. You lie on your mat. The room goes dark. And once again, sleep arrives, not as rest, but as surrender.
The world of the samurai, they say, is built on honor, loyalty, and discipline. But what of those left behind in its shadow? You catch only glimpses of them, quiet silhouettes behind paper screens, a rustle of silk in a hallway, the briefest scent of camellia oil as you pass a side room. The women. You are not allowed to speak to them. Most days you are not allowed to see them. But sometimes, on your way to the training yard, or while carrying scrolls between chambers, you pass one standing in a garden, still as a statue. She wears layers of muted silk. Her face is powdered white. Her eyes do not meet yours, but they linger on you as if searching for something familiar or lost. Perhaps she once had a brother in the dojo, or a son, or a husband who never returned. You do not know, and you cannot ask. In this world, a samurai woman is both revered and ignored. Her duty is silence. Her honor lies in restraint. She is expected to run the household in her husband's absence, often for years, to manage servants, budgets, and reputations, to wait, always to wait. And if her husband dies in battle, she may never even learn how. The news arrives in a scroll, not a body. You hear stories whispered among the older servants of widows who shaved their heads and took vows, who lived the rest of their lives in silence. Some even followed their husbands into death, committing suicide as proof of devotion. Is that also honor?
Then there are the children, boys too young to train, too highborn to labor. You see them in the courtyards, watched by nurses, playing with wooden swords, imitating your every move. They laugh easily. Their feet are soft. They have never scrubbed blood from stone. They look at you like you're already a hero. You want to tell them not to. You want to tell them that behind the armor there is hunger, that beneath the title samurai there is loneliness, that honor for you has tasted mostly like cold rice and dried blood. But you say nothing. You bow. You move on. At night, the barracks are quiet. But in the women's quarters, lanterns flicker well into the dark. You hear them chanting prayers, not loud, just enough to remind the gods they still exist. One of the older boys in your group once confessed, in a rare moment of honesty, that his mother hadn't spoken since his father died. Not a single word, for 3 years. She wore white every day, even while managing the estate, even while pouring tea for visiting lords. What does it mean to be loyal when your only choice is to endure? You begin to see it. The samurai life is not just a man's burden. The weight of the blade rests on many shoulders. Some bear it in silence, others in sorrow, and some disappear entirely beneath it. Tonight, as you lie on your mat, you imagine the sound of a mother's lullaby behind those paper walls. A soft voice, a cool hand, a story that doesn't end with war. But that's not your story. Not yet. The rice in your bowl is white and warm tonight. You eat in silence, kneeling in the dim mess hall, the grains sticking softly to your fingers. It is a small comfort, but it fills your belly. And yet, somewhere just beyond the castle walls, a child is chewing on boiled bark. You know this. Everyone does. No one says it. The castle stands high above the plains, built from wood and stone, surrounded by moats and walls too thick for hope to climb. But below, across the rivers, beyond the fields, are the people who make your life possible, the peasants. They bow when you pass. They lower their eyes. They thank you when you tax them. And still, they suffer. Once a month, you walk through their village, not to help, not to heal, but to collect. Rice, cloth, sometimes sake. You carry your blade at your side, not to use, but to remind. You are the enforcer of the daimyo's will, and his will is simple: tribute. Today an old man kneels before your master. His back is bent, his hands cracked from years in the flooded paddies. He offers a small bag of rice, less than usual. He begs forgiveness. The harvest was poor. His son is sick. The rain came too hard this season. The rats took more than they should. Your master does not listen. He takes the bag and walks on. You see the man's shoulders tremble, but he does not cry. That too would be a crime. As you leave the village, a young girl peeks from behind a hut, her eyes wide. You smile reflexively, but she flinches and hides. You forget that to her you are not human. You are armor. You are power. You are fear. You try not to look back. Later, you polish your sword. It gleams. You are told it is sacred, a symbol of your soul, a sign of your purity. But it is paid for in taxes pulled from hands that never held a weapon. You begin to wonder, who truly bleeds for your honor? One of the older retainers, drunk on sake one evening, mumbled a truth none of you were supposed to hear. Without the peasants, we're just hungry men with expensive knives. You laugh at the time. It was a rare moment of levity. But later, in the quiet of your mat, the words linger. They rot at the edges of your pride. You've never worked a field, you've never planted anything that fed another, and yet your every move is fueled by those who do. You begin to see the imbalance, the weight on one side of the scale, the illusion of strength built on the bones of the bowed. But you say nothing. You are a samurai. You eat, you kneel, you practice, you collect. The system works because no one questions it. And when they do, you are trained to cut them down. Tonight, the rice sits a little heavier in your stomach. You chew slower. You think of the old man, the sick son, the girl behind the hut. You wonder if next season will be worse. You wonder what happens when the peasants have nothing left to give, and what you'll be asked to do then. You were taught that a samurai's blade is his soul, but no one told you what happens when the blade breaks. It is early spring. The ground is still hard, the wind still sharp. You were called to join a patrol, not a battle, not a mission of honor, just a routine escort for a tax caravan moving through rougher lands. You are excited, nervous too. It's your first time carrying your sword beyond the castle gates in full gear. Your armor creaks, still unfamiliar against your ribs. Your feet blister beneath the waraji sandals, woven tight with straw and little mercy. The road is quiet, until it isn't. Bandits. Not an ambush, just desperation dressed in rags and holding knives. It happens fast, shouting, hooves, a scream. You draw your blade. Finally. This is the moment you trained for. And then, crack. The blade strikes a rusty pike and snaps near the hilt. You stare, stunned, holding what is now just a sharp handle. You don't die. Another samurai steps in, slashing down the attacker before he can reach you. The fight ends quickly. The bandits are scattered, but your shame remains. Back at the castle, you're silent. You polish the broken blade. You wrap it in cloth. You bow deeply as you return it to your instructor. He does not shout. He does not hit you. He simply says, "A broken sword reflects its master." You are reassigned. Temporarily, they say. But you know the truth. You are tainted.
Now, you spend your days in the storeroom, inventorying rations, folding old robes, sweeping dust that returns the moment you leave. Your former peers do not look at you. They pass by in silence. You are not dismissed. That would be a relief. You are sidelined. You watch as others rise. One boy, only months younger than you, receives his first command. Another is given a horse. You, once the quickest with a wooden blade, are now the quiet shadow in the corner. Even the kitchen boys have stopped mocking you. That silence stings more than laughter. You begin to hear whispers. Your father is embarrassed. Your clan disappointed. You might be married off to a merchant's daughter just to disappear politely. You once dreamed of dying with honor. Now you fear you'll live without it. One night, you sneak into the training hall alone. The moonlight spills through the paper windows. You bow before the empty room, then kneel and draw your replacement blade. It's plain. Standard issue. It has no soul. You practice the same kata you've done since childhood, over and over. Not to improve, just to feel something return. But the silence presses in. You begin to realize
A samurai is only a samurai if others believe he is. And once that belief fades, what remains? Not glory, not honor, just a name tied to a duty, and a future shaped by silence. You've spent your entire life serving a lord you barely know, but above him, looming silently above all daimyos, above every village, castle, and blade, is the man you will never see, the shogun. His name is spoken only in formal tones, like a prayer or a warning. You've never laid eyes on him, neither has your master, and yet every decision you follow, every life you protect or take, trickles down from his invisible hand. The shogun is not a king, they remind you. Japan already has an emperor, but he is sacred, distant, divine, and silent. The shogun is something else entirely. He is power, and you are one of his fingers, a calloused, disposable one. Word arrives that the shogun's envoys will visit your region. No one sleeps the night before. The castle is scrubbed. Flags are hung. Armor is polished so hard the lacquer cracks. Even the old statues are dusted, as if gods might awaken from being properly cleaned. You are ordered to stand in ceremonial formation. You are not to speak. You are not to look directly at the envoy. He arrives in a palanquin, carried by men who show no exhaustion. His robes are dark and shimmer like the wings of a beetle. He steps down, escorted by guards with cold eyes and smoother swords than yours has ever been. Your daimyo greets him with words dipped in honey. The envoy does not bow. He does not even smile. He nods once, and the message is delivered. Taxes will increase. A new road must be built. Men will be conscripted. The shogun is watching.
Then he leaves. You never hear his voice. In the days that follow, changes ripple through the castle like a chill draft. Old retainers are reassigned. 2 families are stripped of their land. 1 servant disappears. No explanation. Just an empty space where she used to serve tea. You are given a new task, guarding the outer gate at night. It sounds like a privilege, a sign of restored trust, maybe. But in truth, it is cold, exposed, and deeply silent. You shiver as you stand, hand resting on your sword hilt, eyes straining against the dark. This is how the shogun rules, through symbols, shadows, and silence. You begin to understand that loyalty in this world is not mutual. It is expected, demanded, but never returned. If the shogun ordered your daimyo to send you to war tomorrow, he would. If he asked for your life to be taken, it would be done before dawn. There is no glory in being a chess piece, just movement and waiting, and eventually sacrifice. One evening, you overhear 2 guards whispering. The shogun is old, they say. He has no son. When he dies, there may be war, real war, between the daimyos, between clans. Your master might rise or fall, and with him, so will you. Suddenly, you realize how thin your world really is. A crack in a distant palace, and your entire future could turn to ash. You look down at your blade, catching the reflection of the moon, and for the first time, you ask, not what you serve, but who. You've grown older. You feel it, not in your face, but in your silence. The boy who once flinched at shouted commands now walks in measured stillness. Your hands no longer tremble at the hilt, but neither do they reach for glory. Something in you has changed, or perhaps settled.
The sword is still sharp, the armor still fits, but the world around you is beginning to shift. Rumors whisper through the ranks like wind through bamboo. Peace, trade, foreign ships with square sails on distant coasts. New weapons, guns, some say, brought by pale-faced merchants from across the sea. They explode with fire and tear through armor like silk. You've never seen one, but you've heard the stories. And in those stories, the samurai dies, not in battle, but in relevance. The war's slow. Lords grow cautious. Skirmishes are replaced by treaties, ink pressed where once there was blood. The sword remains on your side, but it is drawn less often now. Days pass in quiet drills, empty patrols, ceremonial bows to lords who speak more of commerce than conquest. You're told this is a triumph, but sometimes you wonder, what is a warrior without war? One morning you are sent to a provincial capital, an escort duty. A scholar from Kyoto is visiting, an advisor to the court, dressed not in armor, but in fine robes with scrolls that smell of ink and cedar. He looks at you curiously. "You samurai still wear swords?" he asks, half smiling.
You do not answer. You bow. You keep walking. But his words cling like dust. Later, over tea, you overhear a merchant speaking to a courtier, laughing. There'll be guards next, or accountants, poor swordsmen with good handwriting. And beneath their laughter, you feel something shift in your chest. You return to the castle. The gates feel smaller, the stone less eternal, the drills more theatrical. You wonder how many others are pretending not to notice. The younger students arrive in smaller numbers. Some trained with muskets now. There are murmurs of sending sons to Edo to learn mathematics, foreign languages. A few are even taught Dutch. You are not offered such lessons. Your time was shaped by steel, not ink. You kneel one night in the prayer room, beside a candle barely flickering in its bowl. You bow low. You whisper a vow of loyalty to a world already fading. And when you rise, you wonder, is this what twilight feels like? Not darkness, not defeat, just dimming. One day, a passing traveler gives you a coin to carry his bag. He does not realize you're samurai. You don't correct him, not out of shame, but because you're not entirely sure he's wrong.
Centuries have passed, and yet, when you walk the narrow streets of Kyoto or hear the clang of metal in a quiet kendo hall, you still feel them. The samurai, not in armor, not with blood-stained blades, but in posture, in silence, in memory. The modern world hums with lights and screens and bullet trains that blur across the countryside. Neon signs buzz over convenience stores. But underneath it all, something ancient lingers. You see it in the old man who bows deeply before placing incense on a grave, in the child who straightens his back before entering the dojo, in the office worker who stays late not for reward but out of duty. Bushido, the way of the warrior, never died. It adapted. Honor became perseverance. Loyalty became routine. Discipline turned into self-control. The sword was replaced with pens, machines, spreadsheets. But the silence, the endurance, the sense of something larger than the self? Still there. You visit a castle now, a preserved one. Tourists wander through the halls where you once scrubbed floors. They take selfies before displays of swords in glass cases. Children point and smile. Somewhere, a guide explains that samurai were noble defenders of Japan. You listen from the edge of the group. No one mentions hunger, or humiliation, or cold mats and broken blades. The stories have been polished like the steel on display, gleaming, clean, and distant. But you remember.
You remember the boy who bled from the knuckles, bowing for scraps. The woman behind the screen, silent as a shadow. The peasant's bag of rice, taken without thanks. The sweat beneath your armor. The doubts that grew louder with every kneel. The samurai life was never made for comfort. It was made for endurance. And yet, in this new world, with its humming vending machines and silent escalators, you see a strange reflection. There are still those who serve, who obey, who suffer quietly. You wonder if they know they're descendants of warriors. You walk past a kendo hall. The floor echoes with bamboo swords clashing. A teenage boy bows before entering the practice ring. He moves awkwardly, but he moves with purpose. His eyes are steady. You pause to watch. He doesn't notice you. He's focused, determined, the same way you once were. And in that moment, you see it. The blade was never the soul. The soul was the will to keep going, even in silence, even in pain, even in a world that forgets. As night falls, you step back into the street. Neon glows on the puddles. A soft breeze carries the scent of sakura blossoms, out of season, but always lingering. You take a breath, deep, grounding. The samurai are gone, but not forgotten. They live in memories, in rituals, in shadows, and perhaps in you. Good night.